This is a continuation of our reading of John Calvin's Institutes of the Christian Religion. Number 14. Enough, I believe, would have been said on this subject were I not in a manner arrested by the Council of Nicaea. Not the celebrated council which Constantine the Great assembled, but the one which was held 800 years ago by the orders and under the auspices of the Empress Irene. This council decreed not only that images were to be used in churches, but also that they were to be worshipped. Everything, therefore, that I have said is in danger of suffering great prejudice from the authority of this synod. To confess the truth, however, I am not so much moved by this consideration as by a wish to make my readers aware of the lengths to which the infatuation has been carried by those who had a greater fondness for images than became Christians. But let us first dispose of this matter. Those who defend the use of images appeal to that synod for support. But there is a refutation extant which bears the name of Charlemagne, which is proved by its style to be a production of that period. It gives the opinions delivered by the bishops who were present and the arguments by which they supported them. John, deputy of the Eastern churches, said, quote, God created man in his own image, unquote, and thence inferred that images ought to be used. He also thought there was a recommendation of images in the following passage, quote, Show me thy face, for it is beautiful, unquote. Another, in order to prove that images ought to be placed on altars, quoted the passage, quote, No man, when he hath lighted a candle, putteth it under a bushel, unquote. Another, to show the utility of looking at images, quoted a verse of the Psalms, quote, The light of thy countenance, O Lord, has shone upon us, unquote. Another laid hold of this similitude. As the patriarchs used the sacrifices of the Gentiles, so ought Christians to use the images of saints instead of the idols of the Gentiles. They also twisted to the same effect the words, quote, Lord, I have loved the beauty of thy house, unquote. But the most ingenious interpretation was the following, quote, As we have heard, so also have we seen, unquote. Therefore God is known not merely by the hearing of the word, but also by the seeing of images. Bishop Theodore was equally acute. Quote, God, he says, is to be admired in his saints, unquote. And it is elsewhere said, quote, to the saints who are on earth, unquote. Therefore this must refer to images. In short, their absurdities are so extreme that it is painful even to quote them. Number 15. When they treat of adoration, great stress is laid on the worship of Pharaoh, the staff of Joseph, and the inscription which Jacob set up. In this last case, they not only pervert the meaning of Scripture, but quote what is nowhere to be found. Then the passages quote, Worship at his footstool, worship in his holy mountain. The rulers of the people will worship before thy face, seem to them very solid and apposite proofs. Were one, with the view of turning the defenders of images into ridicule, to put words into their mouths, could they be made to utter greater and grosser absurdities? But to put an end to all doubt on the subject of images, Theodosius, bishop of Myra, confirms the propriety of worshipping them by the dreams of his archdeacon, which he adduces with as much gravity as if he were in possession of a response from heaven. Let the patrons of images now go and urge us with the decree of this synod, as if the venerable fathers did not bring themselves into utter discredit by handling Scripture so childishly, or wresting it so shamefully and profanely. Number 16. I come now to monstrous impieties, which it is strange they ventured to utter, and twice strange that all men did not protest against with the utmost detestation. It is right to expose this frantic and flagitious extravagance, and thereby deprive the worship of images of that gloss of antiquity in which papists seek to deck it. Theodosius, bishop of Amora, fires oft an anathema at all who object to the worship of images. Another attributes all the calamities of Greece and the East to the crime of not worshipping them. Of what punishment, then, are the prophets, apostles, and martyrs worthy, in whose days no images existed? They afterwards add that if the statue of the emperors met with odors and incense, much more the images of saints entitled to the honor. Constantius, bishop of Constantia in Cyprus, professes to embrace images, with reverence, and declares that he will pay them the respect which is due to the ever-blessed Trinity. Every person refusing to do the same thing, he anathematizes and classes with the Marcionites and Manchees. Lest you should think that this the private opinion of an individual, they all assent. Nay, John the Eastern Legate, carried still farther by his zeal, declares it would be better to allow a city to be filled with brothels than to be denied the worship of images. At last it is resolved with one consent that the Samaritans are the worst of all heretics, and that the enemies of images are worse than the Samaritans. But that the play may not pass off without the accustomed plaudite, the whole thus concludes, quote, "Rejoice and exult, ye who having the image of Christ offer sacrifice to it." Unquote. Where is now the distinction of latria and dulia, with which they would throw dust in all eyes, human and divine? The council unreservedly relies as much on images as on the living God.